cancer. Oh, cancer's such a bitch. Oh, we can't stomach cancer. It's getting on our tits. With Vez and Liv.
Today's attempt of navigating the shitstorm sees us talking about Vez versus Liv, the face-off. We're going to talk about our situations in our friendship with different cancers and how it's like affected us emotionally, mentally, physically. We're different, so it doesn't matter. But we thought we'd talk a bit about that.
You calling me fat?
No, not at all. Puffy.
Because we went on about it, how much we look like one another.
We were
and now you're
at
like,
a point we were like twins.
Yeah, you're like, we're different physically because now Liv's fat.
No, I meant different physically because of our physical different diseases.
Diseases.
You take it personally as you want.
Okay, I'm just gonna be misoffended today.
Well, you already offended me by yawning when I was speaking.
I'm just tired. I've been exercising today, alright? You should be proud of me.
I don't even know what to do with myself right now. I have so much adrenaline that I was like expecting to use up by crying on the phone to my consultant when he was like inevitably going to tell me shit news, and now it's not shit news, and I'm like, what do I do with all this energy? I don't know what to do, and I'm cold and I'm freaked out and I'm tired and there's so much going on in me right now. And I also
give us the news, Vez.
Well, that's the thing. I woke up this morning and thought, you know what? I'm gonna put makeup on and make myself look really nice.
Very nice.
Just to feel good about myself. If I ended up getting like shit news, and my consultant called like late as usual, so I was just sat downstairs waiting, and it was a horrible wait. And he picked up. He called me, so I picked up, and he was like, "Hello, you all right?" And I was like, "Why do you always ask that? Of course I'm not okay." And he started the call by being like, "Is your mum there?" And I was like, "No." And then he said, "Is your partner with you?" And I was like, "Should he be?" Thinking, shit, does he really want me to have someone there? I mean, I'm already sat down. I could not be more prepared. And he was like, "No, you don't need anyone. It's fine. It's like fine news. Nothing's really changed." Hallelujah. I was expecting to need to go on to chemo, literally pretty imminently. And no, nothing has really changed.
We're going to keep growing this hair.
Exactly. I'm not going to go bald. It's great.
We're still going to be here next Christmas, Vez. All right.
Fucking better be.
So we can spend it together.
That was the best roast dinner of my life at Christmas. So proud of myself. I'm a chef. I'm a whole ass wife.
Whole ass wife. Luke, grab. Here's your hint, all right?
Yeah, how many hints does that boy need? So today has been a good news day, and now it explains my erratic behaviour and how I'll probably flutter in and out of chaotic to tired and then back again.
Yeah. So we wanted to talk about how like our outcomes
and situations
and whatnot affect us emotionally. So if you guys follow us on Instagram, you would have seen that a few days ago I went to see my oncologist, and it was kind of, since my surgery was a waiting game to find out if I'll be needing more treatment, such as radiotherapy or gamma knife. But when I went to see my oncologist, he was like, "No, you don't need any more treatment. There's no point doing any more, and putting you through more kind of side effects and whatnot." So that meant that I was officially in remission. And in a way, I wanted to like go and shout about it. And then another bit of me was a bit like, oh, but Vez is like in a worse position than me.
Sorry. You didn't tell me straight away. I saw it from your Instagram and then messaged you and was like, "This is amazing." And you were like, "Oh."
You asked me and I just replied, "Yeah, I am in remission for now," kind of thing.
For now.
Like not being like, "Oh my God, I'm in remission." But in a way, I didn't feel like, because my oncologist was like, yes, so at the moment you're cancer free, but it's not unusual to see it spread, in the brain to other places. Which,
So now
like,
you're freaked
he
out
like
about your
gave me
lungs.
something nice and then took it away. Like, gave me a piece of chocolate and then went, give it back straight away.
That's what they do, these bloody people. They give you, they come to you saying, oh, this chemo won't make your hair fall out. And then they misdiagnose you. And then they put you on a chemo that does make your hair fall out. What do you want me to do with that? How do you want me to feel about this doctor?
Yeah, so, like, because that's something I didn't know, or I wasn't told before. It was just, like, hard for me to process it, because, like, I'm like, the risk of me not being cancer-free by the next scan is very real. So, in a way, I wanted to, like, let people know and be happy about it. But then, on the other hand, I was like, I don't want to, like, shove it in your face, because I knew you had this appointment today with your oncologist. And it's weird, because I want you to be healthy. And it's that guilt, isn't it? It's that, what they call survivor's guilt, because like, it's, I know neither of us are dead, but it's like, it's quite similar. It's really hard.
I think it's different to being friends with someone who's already in remission. We had kind of like similar a timeline with our treatment. And to the point, obviously, now we have the same length hair. Everyone's saying, like, oh, you look like twins. So it makes us feel like we're in this same boat. Yeah. And then we split off and have gone very different journeys. And especially, like, with the severity of your surgery and, like, everything that you've been through. And me kind of, like, in this waiting game. It's a weird balance of, like, how... I mean, we all know very well that cancer doesn't just affect... the patient. It has huge ramifications for everyone else they know, and that's why it's like with us, what we go through then affects the other person, especially like what you're saying with celebrating the small wins is what everyone says to do, but then you were like, what for you personally, you didn't want to celebrate because it was like, you don't know where this is going to go, but then also you felt like, oh my god, that survivor's guilt and the guilt of you now being in remission when I might not be. And that's why we wanted to film. Well, that's especially why I said, can we film after I've got my news, because then everything that we talk about now is true to how we're feeling and the situation. Because if we did this a few days ago, I just cried down the phone to my nurse, and that was the day we were initially going to film this, and I'd be speaking very differently, because I'd be speaking in a paranoid mind, from a paranoid mouth, and not having like, I'm really anxious mind and everything, whereas now I'm speaking with like the facts and like a clearer head, but then also kind of grabbing on and like remembering how I did feel 3 days ago when you had your news, and I was like, oh no, I'm really happy but I'm really sad. It's like, I know what you mean, for someone else and being sad for yourself. It's weird.
I remember when you were in remission the first time and I was still on treatment and the roles were reversed, and I was like, I'm so happy for her, but at the same time I'm like, oh, I've still got to do a lot of this through bloody COVID. And I know that with you, your remission means a totally different thing. And I'm really happy for you. Like, I completely understand where you're coming from. You're happy, but at the same time, you're a bit like, oh, like, this is so hard to process. But it was nice that we just talked about it openly, and you were like, oh, I had a bit of a breakdown. And I was straight away, and I was like, oh God, is it because of me? And I knew it would be because of me. So I felt even more guilty then.
Which wasn't my intention at all.
No, I know, but it's just natural.
You may as well just tell it. And I was like, it's not like I thought it would be awkward. I never thought it'd be awkward. It was just very nice. That's the only word I can think of. Because, like, just coming forward, be like, yeah, like, your news then just affected me, but it was nothing to do with you. It was just to do with the fact that we weren't in the same position, which then obviously affects it. It's weird. It's hard to say this whole sad for you, but happy for someone else, because no matter how happy you are for someone else, you will always come back to yourself. It's the selfish nature of humans where you end up thinking about yourself. And that's all it really was. It just... like, it wasn't even you saying, oh, I'm in remission. They said I need no further treatment. And it was, anyone could have said that. But I just would love to hear the words, you don't need any further treatment. Like, you're done for now. Whereas mine's constantly kind of been like, they'll say you're done for now, and then it's the wait. And I hate the waiting game, because I'm in that again now. We're waiting another 3 months. But it kind of all links into what terminology have been kind of pressed and forced upon us. Like, you get labeled, and those labels aren't, like, they don't mean anything. Like, it's exactly what you said when you were talking to your nurse, and having a conversation about, like, labels literally meaning nothing. They're just so subjective to the person. Like, I'm labeled incurable, and that could mean a whole manner of things for prognosis, for like my length of life, my quality of life. Who knows? It's going to be completely different. And you were like, you got really like scared around the term metastatic. And
don't Google things, kids. I'm telling you,
don't Google things.
Don't Google things, because I've had such a few shit days because I Googled something and it basically says you're dead.
You go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And you have to dig yourself out afterwards. And it's like, well, great.
Yeah, so for me, like, this metastatic, I've Googled the definition.
Don't Google.
Do you want to go
Google.
first? I Googled, our Changa mushroom extract has been dispatched, by the way, already.
Lovely.
What great service. Me and Vez are going to take mushrooms to kill our cancer cells.
I've been completely swayed. I'm under the influence of Liv the Karen.
No, well, they're not mushrooms like D-rugs. That's what I call
D-rugs.
drugs. D-rugs.
Oh, you said that earlier, and my brain was lagging. I was like, what did she just say? D-rugs? What?
So metastasis, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Why am I...
Just my
It's not
deadpan
funny.
of like, whatever you say it like, I'll always just say, yeah. Because I support your foreign tongue.
Thank you, my foreign tongue. So metastasis is a pathogen... Oh, I can't do it.
You started so strong. Go on, I believe in you.
I'm so tired. Should have not gone for that walk.
I love taking the piss.
Metastasis is a pathogenic agent spread from initial or primary site to a different or secondary site within the host's. I'm the host.
They could not have
Body.
given you harder words to say in that sentence, in that description, could they? Tongue-tied.
The term is typically...
Come on,
I do
pull yourself
apologise.
together.
The term is typically used when referring to metastasis by a cancerous tumour. The newly pathological sites then are metast. It's just not meant to be. Do you know what I mean? It's not meant to be because I just can't say it.
Any M word, just assume it's metastatic. Metastasized.
So basically, what it means: had cancer in my tit, then that cancer, that same cancer went through my lymph nodes and went whoa up my brain, and it started
exactly
growing
what
there.
happened. Yeah, so you're basically, that's what metastatic is. So people hear metastatic and think, shit, oh my God. And they go above and beyond. That's actually a positive spin on it. They go out of their way of thinking her cancer spread. That means death, because everyone just assumes if your cancer's spread, you're going to die. And really,
also because
all
it's called
metastatic
stage
means,
4.
The
stage
stages
4.
come into it as well.
Oh, the stages are so much bullshit as well.
I mean, what I find weird is, like, I was diagnosed with stage 1 ovarian cancer, and then a month later, it had spread into my entire abdomen, and they were like, you're stage 3. But on all my forms, it was still stage 1. And I was like, how does this work? And they were like, well, you kind of... Because it's obviously not true, because you change stages. If you have a worser? Is that a word? I mean, it is now.
Worse.
God, I nearly said badder. That's not a word either. I can't think. I'm going to go with worser because that was fun to say. a worse stage, if your condition worsens, that's the word I was looking for. If your condition worsens and you go to a different stage, like a higher stage, I don't understand how they were like, oh, you just stay at, I don't know what I'm trying to say now. You stay at the stage you were initially diagnosed at, which is just not true. So I had it in my mind that if you were diagnosed with stage 1 and then it spread everywhere, you'd still be labelled essentially stage 1 because that's when you found it. You just went from stage 1 caught early to stage 1 caught late. Weird. Anyway, I don't know that. I don't Bible me. Don't quote me.
So the stages for me, again, just don't make sense because when I was first diagnosed, it was in my boob and in my lymph nodes. So I was stage 2. And now I'm just counted as stage 4 because it's metastatic. And it's like, you know, I am stage 4 and then someone next to me could be stage 4 and they could be dead tomorrow. You know, we've been diagnosed at the same time. And for me, I could be living for another 15, 20 years. So it's like, it's not necessarily like, it's like an individual thing.
You can't generalize. It's so like they make these sweeping general, not like anyone. I just say they as in general. Sweeping generalizations are made about stages and terminology, and I just think metastatic. When you were coming to me being like, oh, I don't want to be labelled this, and you were not wanting, but you almost would have preferred the brain cancer to be its own form and not have spread. And I was like, but if
or a benign tumour.
Yeah, and literally anything other than metastatic. And in my head, I was like, yeah, it's not great if something's spread, but all metastatic literally means is it's a word to describe cancer having been somewhere that's then travelled. Because you could be, like you said, you could be metastatic with a really shit cancer that's so aggressive and like so rare, say. Or you could be metastatic with a cancer that's actually not spread that far and isn't shutting down your organs. It's so difficult, and like with me, that's like your term that you've got to kind of debunk.
I've just come up with a brilliant like Instagram bio. The only thing that did some traveling in 2020 was my cancer because it went from my tit to my brain.
Oh my god! Update it. That is amazing. That's almost like me because I did my makeup today and I was really feeling myself, so I just did loads of videos. So TikTok coming at you today. That. But I one of my friends was like the elegance, and I just replied like the vanity, and then I was like, oh my god, my parents should have called me Vanity instead of Verity, and I just thought that was quite a good pun.
That's quite good, to be fair.
Sorry,
you were saying.
Your terminology to debunk in your own head was metastatic, and mine was incurable. When I relapsed and they said, yeah, your cancer's now incurable, all they meant is that any treatment I get, they're coming at without a curative approach. Because anyone who has treatment in chemotherapy, any form, radiotherapy, immunotherapy, whatever, it will always be given, we talked about this in our chemo one, it will always be given with the intent of being curative and with a curative approach because you want to cure the cancer, you want to get rid of it for good, you want to, what's the word?
Yeah.
You just want to blow it up in your own body with these toxins. You want to eradicate. That's the word I was looking for. I'm not very good with words today. You want to eradicate that cancer. So coming back from a relapse, that wasn't the intention anymore. It was almost managing what the state of my body was doing, and it was keeping the cancer at bay for as long as possible without putting me on treatment. So it was like keeping me off treatment for as long as possible and keeping me alive and without treatment for as long as possible. So it essentially, incurable means treatment that can be that can manage, like so chemo or any other thing that can manage the cancer, but it is unlikely that it will ever get rid of it. When I first had incurable, I thought, shit, I'm terminal because I'll die from cancer. Cancer will kill me, or like cancer-related stuff. Whereas terminal is like, surely terminal just means no treatment is gonna stop the progression of this cancer, of this disease. So I was almost calling myself terminal because I knew that because my cancer wasn't going to be cured and I would probably die from it, I was thinking, well, that's terminal, surely. And then I got completely bogged down with all of these labels when really no one's been in my situation before. My cancer is so rare that if you like put me up against another patient with DSRCT, we would not be reacting the same at all. So I was like, so what's the point in me saying, oh, I'm incurable, when someone with colon cancer could say they're incurable, and we were very, very different. So it's almost like, it's very difficult when you're already getting bogged down with the fact that you're ill, then you have to go through treatment, and then you come out with labels that you don't know what to do with. You just feel like, well, slap it on my head. Like, what do you want me to do with that? And it's really difficult.
That's what's difficult to deal with, because, you know, we got two different terms going on, and I feel, in a way, in my head, because at the moment I'm struggling a little bit mentally, in my head, like, because I'm not feeling as well, in my head I've got the same exact thoughts as you, because I'm like, well, this is just gonna fucking spread everywhere, isn't it, and it's gonna kill me. Like, it's like this. So I'm now waiting for February and waiting for this scan, and at the same time trying to enjoy every day at the moment as well. It's just, yeah. So then I'm like, as soon as that scan happens, my anxiety is going to be through the roof, and I'm already, like, in my head imagining the phone call from the oncologist and just absolutely shitting my pants, waiting to hear what he's going to say. And then if that's clear, I've just been saying that's going to be the best birthday present that I'll need for February. And then from there on, it's waiting another 3 months to see what happens, and it's just getting used to that. And I know that if it does spread somewhere else, I've got options, and it's quite a treatable cancer. But it's just processing that. And at the moment, because I'm not feeling very well, and I'm very tired and fatigued.
Point in case.
Here's the proof. It's, like, very difficult to like, get your head around it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we've talked about it a lot, I think, where we're like, sometimes talking to the oncologist is actually worse than, like, being left to your own devices.
Yeah.
Because last time you spoke to your oncologist, you were there, like, feeling absolutely fine, and then they're like, oh, well, this is really bad, and they're like, excuse me, I'm here, I'm absolutely fine, like,
literally.
Shut up. And for me at the moment is just that thing where I didn't realise that, you know, the chances of another brain tumour popping up are quite big. So you're just like,
and that's the thing, you're so aware of your own thoughts and what you're doing and what you're dealing with before an appointment. When you have that appointment, you then, like we've said before, always write down your questions and your queries so that you don't forget them in that moment. Because in that moment, you're coming forward with what you want to know, and then you're being absolutely bombarded with information you never even, it hadn't occurred to you, like that thought hadn't occurred to you of how common it might be for a tumour to appear back in your brain. But I had a conversation with my consultant today, and he said I get more and more aware of how my patients feel worse, in like a worse mental position after they finish treatment than actually being on chemo. Like, you don't want to go on chemo.
But it's like that reassurance, isn't it?
Yeah, because me and my mum have been quite. I mean, we're the ones, like, my mum helps in every appointment pretty much with, like, doing the talking while I do the, like, digesting of information. And she's, I think, from coming from a mother and, like, a carer parent perspective of, like, that, I've just said carer. So she's coming from that carer perspective, of she just if treatment and chemo is going to be what saves me, she wants me on it. Like, she'd much rather I go on chemo and then come off it having, like, starting fresh essentially, and do that over and over, to make sure that I live. And my doctors are coming from the perspective of, we're only going to give you treatment if you need it, because we don't want to ruin your quality of life. And then it becomes a battle of, like, well, when you're on chemo, as horrible as it is, mentally you've lost all of your routine and you only have one goal, and that is to finish chemo. So when you come out of chemo, your routine's gone because it was ruined by going in and out of hospital, and ruining your social life. But also you're like, well, what is my goal now? I can't, like, my goal was to live and now I'm living. There's nothing to do. And it's almost like then you start waiting for the cancer to come back, and you don't want to do that, but that's where your mind travels to, like, well, what? Yeah. And you're in this, like, whole haze. And that's what's really weird now, is my position of, of kind of being relatively unchanging, like not negative but not overly positive. It's a weird one. If it had grown back, if I was in a different position today where it had grown significantly and I was going to need treatment, they would want me to hop onto a trial, like a clinical trial with mostly that's like the experimental medication and treatment. And it's a weird mindset to be in, of being like, I want to get on a trial, like that is where I'd want to be, that is probably where I'm going to have my most success with treatment. But you don't want to go on the trial because that means that your cancer's actually progressed. So it's like, I want to get out of this waiting game, but by getting out of this waiting game, it means that my cancer's going to have to have spread or like grown and the disease has gotten worse. So how do you contend with all of that kind of opposing thoughts?
I completely understand like what you're talking about, because when I was with my oncologist the other day, I was like, am I having any more treatment? And he's like, well, we don't see any point really, because you know they took the tumor clear out and obviously we can't see cancer cells. And I was like, yeah, maybe just like a little bit, just like, can you like flush through a bit of chemo through me? Yeah. Just to kill off whatever's left, kind of thing. And that's the thing about being on chemo, is last time when I got diagnosed, they could see something on my lungs and they were like, we're not worried about it too much because it's tiny, and you're gonna have chemo anyway, so if it is anything, it should kind of do the job really. And it did disappear. So you know, that just puts your mind at rest, because then you're like, well, if there is any cancer cells anywhere else in my body, this chemo should kill it off. And then they kind of like, you feel like you're back to square one, like in a positive way, because then you're like, well, my body's been flushed through with chemo, and if there was anything, hopefully it's killed it off. And yeah, that just kind of just, you know, puts you at peace, because I'm like, I think I would rather just have like a bit of chemo. Like Liam was saying the other night, he was like, can they not just do like a bag, like a bag every 3 months? Yeah, just flush your system through, just to like make sure like anything that's in there that's killed off. But it's not as easy as that, is it?
I think, well, that's the thing. I think that's how most cancer patients and everyone involved with cancer, families, whatever, everyone bar the professionals, view chemo as being like, well, just give me some. Surely that will blast it. And that's how I've always viewed it, even now, that chemo just blasts those cancer cells. Because I've always been in a position where I've been empty of disease when I've gone to chemo, because I've had surgery first and it's always been successful, thank God. I've always been in a position where the chemo is essentially blasting those residual cells and getting kind of clearing you out of the stuff that wasn't visible. And I think there's something comforting in knowing that you're empty of disease before going on to chemo. And I don't have experience of kind of having to shrink anything. So I think that's the weird thought, is we're both being like, we've had surgery, we want it blasted, and that's how I'll always view it. But it's a weird one to try and wrap your head around, why they won't just give you some drugs that will hopefully kill it. What's funny? Are you looking at a fly? Why do flies always interrupt us? It's either my dog barking or a fly buzzing you try and clap at, and I think you're like bowing. You're delirious.
Sorry. Well, no, when I first got diagnosed, my tumor was so big that they were like, well, if we cut it out of your boob now, you're just gonna have like a dent in your boob. So
indented tits.
That's why they did chemo first. So after like 3 chemos, I couldn't feel the tumor anymore, and that freaked me out. But back then I didn't know enough about cancer like to worry about the fact that I was having chemo before surgery.
Yeah. In
hindsight, knowing what I know now, I would have chosen surgery first and have an indented tit to show her off.
Well, you don't even want your tits now, do you? You just want them gone. They're causing you too much problems.
Yeah. No, yeah, they are. Lymphedema. Love it. Yeah, but I think the more you know. For me, at the moment, I'm in a really weird stage where I'm like almost grieving my old life again, because my cancer has progressed and it's like processing it. And you know, whilst I feel fine, it's really nice and good and it's alright, but when you don't feel fine, it's a lot harder to stay positive and accepting it. And
Yeah.
like what we talked about in the other episode is like, you look at these healthy girls and you're like, you know, why does she have a normally perfect life? Why have I been given this task to keep not fighting, to keep like having this cancer?
Persist with.
Yeah, and you know, why me kind of thing. And
You do get
that's,
into, you do get bogged down with the why me mentality.
Yeah.
And sometimes you really need it to kind of just
and I'm just
have
trying
that
to keep myself
sadness.
Yeah, and I think it's just all part of the process, and I'm sure it'll pass, like anything. But I'm just trying to stay positive as much as I can and distract myself from those thoughts. So that's completely normal. But metastatic doesn't always mean death. Incurable doesn't always mean death. So
In some cases
people
it
shouldn't.
can, because obviously that's what patients have dealt with. But you just can't compare yourself to other patients. That's the problem.
No,
And that's
'cause
why
it's not
terminology can be as damaging as the cancer itself, because you then go on Google and you Google what it means, and Google will come back with statistics, and then that means you are being compared to anyone else who's ever had this term, and which you aren't. And it's that's the problem. It's damaging, and I think everything is always going to have a mental effect, and it's always going to impact you, and it's just constantly finding ways around that. I never thought I would be, like, in our friendship, I would be affected by news you got. Like, I didn't, apart from being like, oh, that's Liv, yeah, separate part of my mind for Liv, congratulations. And I was like, and suddenly it's coming into my own mind of me dealing with my own cancer, that suddenly just out of nowhere I'm like crying because I'm like guilty that I'm even thinking you had an effect on me. It's weird. You just never know where it's going to come from.
No, yeah. So you got to navigate it as you go. And another thing, like with remission, for example, another label. So remission, you're in remission for 5 years, I believe. And then once you reach the 5-year target of remission,
They expect
means you're cancer free. But then cured. But then I'm like, what if you got cancer 5 years and 1 day after you've had cancer?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you were in remission for 1 day, and then boom, you got cancer again. So all these labels, really, they don't really work. Someone changed the cancer system. You know, the staging doesn't work. It just scares you. It just freaks you out.
With well, I just itched my head and now I'm confused. Why? Oh, it's like with when you were talking about remission. When does that even start? Because some people say, oh, it's when they finish their chemo, like their final bag. Some people say it's when they got their clear scan results. And it's the same with like cancerversaries. Some people say, oh, I celebrated it I celebrate it from my diagnosis date. Or some people, and I say celebrate, I just mean mark the occasion. Like you go cyclical years and go, oh, this was the day this happened, and not an actual celebration. But some people, like mark the occasion from the date they were diagnosed as opposed to the date they finished treatment. So it's like, it's always subjective. It's always down to the individual. Which just makes it even harder, because we've said all along there's no manual to follow to help you, kind of like a step-by-step guide to help you through it. We've always said you have to navigate this yourself, even down to like you can't copy what someone else's coping mechanisms. Like someone else had their cancerversary on the day they were diagnosed, and on the day you're diagnosed you're like, why on earth are they celebrating this? Why are they marking this? This is the worst day ever. But for that person it might just be like, well, this was the day it happened and look, I'm still here, as opposed to saying this is the day I'm going to finish it. But
I
can
personally
kind of
see
understand
that as a celebration, because I finally got diagnosed. Like, for me, that is a celebration, because at last,
was wrong.
Yeah, someone was like, "Oh, this is cancer."
Yeah,
cancer.
But I would also do the same. I can't remember. I finished treatment twice now. I mean, I think it was January sometime that I got my clear scan results, both times essentially. But I remember that it was the 14th of June that I got diagnosed, because obviously I had, like you, I had something massive growing and I finally got results. But it's also a date that's never going to change, whereas it's like, it's a fixed date, whereas my end of treatment can be whenever. Like, I don't have the luxury of only finishing once and then having only 2 dates. So I think it's just a weird world of everyone doing everything differently.
And whatever suits you, you do you, boo.
Yeah, exactly. If you need to have a breakdown, that's fine. We've done loads.
I just wish we could like hug. I need a hug right now.
Yeah.
From someone other than Liam, because I'm knocking out.
I was thinking about that earlier though, actually. Like how odd it is that mostly whenever you like greet family members, you go from kind of like that half hug because you're half the height of your grandparents to then suddenly you're old enough to then kind of hug and do the like kiss on each cheek thing and feel really adult and mature. Like, how weird is it that any person I've seen, I've just kind of greeted with a hey and then gone about our business, whereas I used to like run into people's arms and hug them, and all hugs feel different. Like all my friends in school, because I was always the tallest girl out of all of us, they'd be like, oh, a severity hug, because I'd literally envelop them in a bear hug. And everyone's
face
hugs.
was like in your boobs, innit?
Yeah, I know, my boobs were like a cushion. That's what everyone used to say. That hasn't changed. But yeah, like it's weird that you don't have that form of comfort anymore, of just like a hug can really do a lot when you're feeling down.
Yeah. No, I do have a comforter at home, but sometimes it's like talking to you is my biggest relief, because you're like a fellow cancer pal. And then like it's almost weird, like I just realized now that like we're not able to be like physically next to each other at the moment, so it kind of sucks. But
I really thought you were going to say physically intimate, and I was like, we weren't ever that. My mind went somewhere else.
Yeah, as always. But yeah, I think that's all. Was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think it was just really raising awareness that you, within your friendships, like no one, like we've just said, that everyone is different, and of course that's going to come into your friendships as well, that because you're having different journeys, but your what happens to you is always going to end up affecting someone else, even if it was unintentional breakdowns are fine too. Fine, not fun. I just realized that sounded like I said fun. They're not fun. They're horrible.
No, they're not. They are.
But it is just kind of like we come across, I guess, on this platform, like we've found out these hacks because we've done it twice, and so then we're kind of giving our opinions on everything we've experienced, and we kind of forgot all the way along that what we experience also then affects the other person, because we're talking about it and we're in contact all the time. Like I talk to you probably more than I talk to Luke, to be honest. Like we're constantly talking to each other, and I think I forgot that anything happening to you will then affect me, like as a friend, like from your friend, but then also because we've got different cancer journeys. It's almost like a weird form of envy.
Yeah.
I get sometimes, and that's completely on me. That's just like me, like you saying, when you do your why me mentality to normal people, you can also do that with cancer patients. That why me mentality is always going to be there. You will always think, when you're in your like spiraling down, you'll look at normal people who are healthy and think, why on earth did I have to be ill? Why can't I have normal problems? But then when you're also there, you've got to be aware that you'll also probably look at other cancer people and be like, well, why haven't I got his situation where he's getting told he has treatment options? Not that they've got a good situation, but why haven't you then got a situation that's better? But then you also then spin it around and go, oh my God, I could be in their position and be so much worse.
Yeah.
And so
it's the same when someone's in a worse off situation than you. You also have that guilt, like I said earlier, where you're like, I wish, like, I don't think you ever wish like you were in their position, but you're like, I wish they were in a better position. It's
survivor's guilt and then patient envy, I think, are the two things that have become quite prevalent in remission.
But it's good that we're so open
relapsing
about it, and that we just chatted about it and kind of let it go. And it's really good that you got good news today, because I was like, oh, if Verity gets bad news today, I'm gonna feel even more guilty then.
It would have been interesting with me with a full face of makeup crying. It would have been definitely visually, if you're watching the YouTube video, that would have been an interesting one. But no tears today. It's been all good.
It's all good. And
I
let's
think
hope
what
it stays that way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we've highlighted, is that we've just communicated about it. And I think that was the best thing we could have done, instead of me just sitting on my feelings and ended up making it awkward, because it wasn't ever about you, Liv. Sorry, no offense. It's always about you, but not this time. It was about me wanting a better situation for myself. And it was almost like rubbing salt in the wound, hearing someone else get the news. Not like I wanted, but it just kind of felt like, why me? And I was descending into that. And so the fact that I just said, like, yeah, I had a breakdown, it obviously just randomly affected me. And you also being aware that it could, the fact that we just talked about it was like, woo, fireworks. We're now, everything's out in the open. And it's like, oh, we're allowed to feel like this. It was almost enabling us to have those feelings and them actually be okay. There's nothing wrong
I'm
with
glad
them.
you told me why, and you weren't just like, oh, well, I had a breakdown because, I don't know, ran out of mashed potatoes.
I actually would. I fucking love carbs.
I would. I love mash. But for me as well, like the whole remission thing, I think just felt surreal, because last time the journey to remission was just so long and so gruesome,
Draining.
like chemo, surgery, and then radiotherapy, and now it's just been surgery. And like, I know the surgery was a lot more intense, and then the recovery is so much harder in a way. But I don't know, just felt like I just had surgery, and that just like makes me think of a friend who had breast cancer as well, and she needed just surgery to get rid of it, and like she just felt a lot of guilt on that as well, because people sometimes will be like, well, did you even have cancer? Like, you only had surgery to get rid of it.
You've gone on to something here. You've nailed that, hit the nail on the head with how some people...
And I think...
There are some people within the cancer community. I think it's more prevalent with breast cancer, actually, because that's a cancer
they're like,
where
my cancer
you
is
can
more
have
valid.
preventative surgery, can't you? Like, you can... So I think some cancer patients within that community, like, we obviously follow loads of pages where you kind of see loads of responses from all over the world of how people have felt. With preventative surgery, I think that's quite difficult, because it's like you've been told you could get cancer, but you haven't had... I think there's very different having a cancer scare and having a cancer diagnosis, and I don't think you can compare them. They shouldn't be compared because they're different. Like, obviously, that's like... we always say you can't... But you shouldn't really compare in general anyway.
But I don't think it's fair to act like you've had cancer.
No. And I think
by just having preventative surgery. But this friend I'm talking about actually had cancer, and then she had to have surgery to remove her tumour.
Yeah.
And I know she had some comments of people being like, well, you didn't even have to like go through that much. So like, it doesn't make it invalid. It's still the trauma of being... It's still the paranoia of being like, oh my God, is it definitely gone? Like...
Yeah.
We've
talked about this in our chemo podcast with what was I going to say? Oh, with the validation of treatment, whatever treatment you have, if you've had a cancer diagnosis, that shit weighs you down no matter what you have to go through, because a lot of it is mental as well as physical. But yeah, like I think what's important is some celebrate the small wins is a very common thing to say. I think what you need to do is just mark the occasion. If you have those feelings around a certain day, around a certain topic, you do need to mark it in your brain and be aware of it, and not just push it to the side, because we've said loads and loads and loads and times before, if you push things to the side, they're going to come back, and they're going to come back with a bigger bite.
Bite you in the ass.
They'll fucking nip you. They'll make you bleed. What is that? You really trying to bite with your... That looked like you were trying to do a shadow puppet of like a dog.
But yes, this is our tangent today. Thank you for listening, and catch you on the rebound.
Not the relapse.